Well guys, as expected, the government passed a law mandating vaccines for care workers, despite them saying no one will be mandated to take it. I don't know how many times at this point.
Let's be clear, there will be no compulsory vaccination. That's not the way we do things in this country. We think it's a good idea. Let's be clear, there will be no compulsory vaccination. That's not the way we do things in this country. We think it's a good idea.
I actually covered this topic in March when the plan was made public and called out the utter lunacy that it is, as have a fair few Tory MPs and either Labour ones too.
She will appreciate that the provisions before us extend well beyond care home staff. But with respect to those staff, the 1% that she spoke of, in the absence of the impact assessment, if their failure to be vaccinated results in dismissal, who will be responsible for the compensation?
Well, my right honourable friend asks an important question about the process of how this would work in practice, although I think he's presuming that there is a question of compensation here.
Yep, Labour MPs actually opposed something because it passed 319 votes to 246. Meaning we have at least 319 mandatory vaccine supporting tosspots sitting in the House of Commons, who I bet screamed clap for carers last year while calling them all heroes. Now some of them won't do what the government wants. They mandate medical treatments against their human rights, despite countless medical bodies telling them this is not a good idea. Not only is this a bad idea for the government's credibility, but also for the person administering the jab, because it breaches the General Medical Council's guidance on consent, something many of you already know. And I'm sure I don't even need to point out how very important that is for obvious fucking reasons. In fact, the BMJ, or British Medical Journal, is one of them, who's put out a rather scathing editorial piece against this lunacy. It's coming from Lydia Hayes, a professor at law for Kent University, and Alison M. Pollock, professor of public health for the Institute of Population Health Sciences at Newcastle University. And let's be honest, it really doesn't start well for the government or this bullshit. The first line reads unnecessary, disproportionate and misguided. They go on to talk about the expansion of the law, but I've dealt with that in my video before, so we'll move on to this bit here, which is much more important. It said official claims that we're not forcing anyone to take the vaccine are disingenuous.
Let's be clear, there will be no compulsory vaccination. That's not the way we do things in this country. We think it's a good idea.
Care home workers who reject COVID-19 vaccination will be dismissed from employment without compensation and barred from access to their occupation. A regulatory amendment will make it unlawful for care homes to permit care workers to enter the care home premises without proof of full vaccination. They will impose a new duty of all registered providers of residential care to verify the medical status of each worker, including full-time and part-time agency staff employed directly by a care home and volunteers. It will give responsibility for compliance and enforcement to the Care Quality Commission. And shit, it will even include hairdressers or workmen entering the building for fuck's sake. It's just complete lunacy, as I said. In fact, I think the old shit Rod Stewart or Pound Shop Peter Stringfellow might be happy with this. He has some business for his vaccine apartheid supporting plumbing business, the absolute wanker.
We need to make sure and roll out the situation that we have the vaccine passport. No more talking about it, no more pussyfooting about with it. Let's get it moving. Let's get a government scheme out there. But look, undoubtedly, 2 or 3 months ago, I came up with the idea, no jab, no job. And that's something we're carrying out at Pimlico Plumbers. Nobody's going to come and work for us unless they've had the vaccine and they've got proof that they've had it. We're not going to send engineers out to customers' houses once the vaccine is properly rolled out unless they've had the vaccine. So for me, it's a no-brainer. From a business point of view, it's a must. And, the quicker that everybody acknowledges that, without proof of the vaccine, you can't go into a pub, club, restaurant, gymnasium, anywhere at all. You can't travel, theatre, you can't even go into work. I mean, personally, I have to say, I don't even think that we should allow people on the streets unless they've had the vaccine.
Yep, that deluded tosspot there will be happy with it, I'm sure. The editorial goes on though. The Providers Association, Care England and the National Care Forum, as well as trade unions, have expressed concern that coercion is not the best way forward. Well, I have to say, I'm glad they pointed out the fucking obvious there. Forcing people to do something will turn those who support what the government are doing against it, which I have actually seen and said before. They go on, vaccination is not a panacea for safety. Safety, according to the current regulatory law, is achieved through adequate staffing levels, training, equipment, cleanliness, PPE, risk assessment and consultation with staff and residents. But yeah, risk assessment is not something the government do these days, is it? How many times have they been called out for not doing a risk assessment before pushing through policies like this one? And as expected, there is no risk assessment made for this new law that we have here, something Tory MPs pointed out yesterday.
Can I just say to the Minister, coming back to this point about the impact assessment, in the documents prepared for the House, it says a full impact assessment has been prepared. Now, Ministers need to give accurate information to the House. If that is not correct, and it's misleading, it should be corrected immediately. And it's not good enough to say something's going to be coming along afterwards. We're going to be asked to vote on this today. There is no urgency here. These regulations do not come into force for 16 weeks until November. So it is perfectly reasonable for them to be taken away, for that impact assessment which has been prepared to be published. If there's uncertainty, share the uncertainty with the House. It isn't good enough to expect us to vote on something that is difficult and controversial and complicated and not share the information with the House that the Minister has at her disposal. It is an abuse. It's not good enough.
Yes, yesterday I asked the House of Commons Library to inquire of the department where this impact assessment was. And the department informed the House of Commons Library that they were about to present the impact assessment. They did not say the impact assessment was still under preparation. The implication was that it was ready to be given to the House and it was just a matter of time, and they said they'd do it as soon as possible.
The question we as legislators have to grapple with is whether coercion is the answer and what might be the unintended consequences of mandating vaccination for some of the lowest paid and most undervalued workers in our society.
Further down they say, the liberty of non-vaccination is a principle established in UK law since 1898. It followed vigorous and widespread protests about the compulsory vaccination for smallpox that was imposed by the Vaccination Act 1853. Amendments to the Vaccination Act in 1898 and 1907 provided legal recognition of conscientious objection for those who were honestly opposed to vaccination and noted too the contribution of improved sanitation to the drop in smallpox. So you are talking about over 100 years of medical convention being shat all over by these authoritarian fucking lunatics. In fact, Sajid Javid was told to hold this vote off because of that. Obviously, he went ahead with it anyway, so we can expect him to be exactly the same as Matt Hancock if you ask me. They go on to say compulsory vaccination has not been attempted since in the UK. The Coronavirus Act 2020 was careful to avoid changes to the Health and Social Care Act 2008, which excluded mandatory medical treatment, including vaccination, from the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care's power. Yeah, they avoided a lot of things they should have used because it didn't give them the ultimate power that they have with this Coronavirus Act 2020. This is something I've also called out before, and in fact should show to anyone just how scummy they are, but of course we already knew that anyway. They continue down here, the government's decision on compulsory vaccination for care home workers was based on claims of low vaccine uptake in some care homes that were subsequently echoed in media reports. However, closer scrutiny of the most recent data shows that uptake of the first dose of COVID-19 vaccination among care workers is below 80% in only 3 upper-tier local authorities. But these numbers are an artefact of very low numbers of staff employed by care homes in these 3. So yet again, dodgy data is used to push through government policy and change laws while smashing people's rights with just 90 minutes of debate. Because oh yeah, this lunacy was only worth 90 minutes of discussion in the Commons, because they are there to rubber stamp Boris the sock puppet Johnson's bullshit, not serve the people. Now obviously there I didn't read all of the BMJ's article, but I will link it down below for you so you can all go through it and share it around like this video. At the end of the day, we have to stop this complete fucking lunacy in its tracks, because eventually it will affect everything else. Precedent has been set with this vote. We are now on a slippery slope, my friends.
Where